No. The thing that makes baseball so beautiful, I mean, there's a lot of things that make baseball beautiful. There's no clock. A clock is an arbitrary external condition that you need because you haven't designed your game perfectly.
The only, honestly,
it's
the
super
only sport,
eschatological. The idea that it's all about getting home. I mean,
the only sport that I've been able to get into has been this spring when Melissa and I started watching F1.
F1.
It is amazing. I'm sitting there after watching our second race. I'm like, I think after 55 years, I found a sport that I like.
There's no ball or puck. Maybe that was the problem.
It's fabulous. So here we go in 3, 2, and 1. I'm Deacon Eric.
And I'm Dr. Brett Salkeld.
And you're listening to Thinking Faith.
This is a podcast brought to you by the Archdiocese of Regina, where we attempt to navigate this winding road of faith in Jesus Christ so that we might know Him more intimately, love Him more profoundly, and together serve Him more deeply in our daily lives.
Welcome, everyone, to another week of Thinking Faith. This is our first time in the studio since the summer.
Yeah.
First time of this new season.
Now we recorded things in June that are part of this season. Yeah, we had a couple.
Yeah.
So this is all very confusing. This is like inside baseball.
Yeah.
If people are doing like an oral history of the Thinking Faith podcast, then this is the first one we recorded in the fall of 2025 in the studio. But it's not
the first thing that aired.
There you go.
Yeah, but yeah.
Because we know that there's people out there doing that with the Thinking Faith podcast.
Oh, yeah. There'd be a whole biopic, I'm sure, at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
Biopic. Oh, my gosh. All right.
Okay. So we are gathering together today to have really a special kind of podcast.
We picked a serious one.
Yeah. Yeah, a serious one. This is September. It is Suicide Prevention Month for North America, and a few other places in the world as well recognize September as a month dedicated to raising awareness around suicide and encouraging prevention. And that as well. I think many of our listeners and us as hosts have been touched in different ways by suicide in our lives. If this is something that has touched your life, the life of someone that you love or that you know, we want to name up front that this is a discussion that may be triggering for some people, and to encourage you to know those people who you feel most comfortable to turn to when you're experiencing strong emotions and experiences like that. You might want to have that person or people kind of on your mind at the forefront as you're sharing today's show.
Right.
And if you need, Canada has a new suicide helpline, a 988 number that you can call and connect with someone immediately that can accompany you and talk you through and help find additional supports for you as well.
And these things can be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I've never called a suicide hotline, but I've called a mental health crisis, whatever line.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're just in a tailspin.
That's right.
And someone who with a little training, who knows how to talk to you, can really shift your perspective in a relatively short period of time. It's not frivolous. It can. I feel like it can sound like, just phoning a stranger does not seem adequate to the task. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
But it can make a big difference.
There's something about speaking with somebody who is separated from your situation.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Separated, maybe not personally invested, and yet empathetic and willing to be there in that space with you.
Right.
It's incredibly healing.
And the fact that they have some training is really worthwhile, because a lot of people with very good intentions, and I think this will come up in the conversation, will say things that they think are helpful, that they intend to be helpful, that are not necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
And so even some of us, it's worth, depending on like where you work and what the circumstances that present themselves to you are, to get a little bit of training in this. So just so you don't put your foot in it.
That's right.
And
one of the things that we are actually rolling out in the Archdiocese, we started this spring and moving into the fall and into 2026, is offering mental health first aid courses, certification courses, for individuals, for parishes, for pastors, for office staff, specifically to provide some of those skills,
right,
for that. And so if you're a listener and that's something that would be of interest to you, get in touch with me here at the office. I use my email address all the time on the show. So, but it's egurash@archregina.sk.ca. And we can look at setting something up, because I think it's really important. The more people that have that comfort level and the skill sets involved to just be able to be with people, right, and to have some resources at hand to connect individuals to additional supports, as well as help for ourselves.
Right.
One of the things that's been interesting since they've rolled out mental health first aid in North America is realizing that it's been of great benefit to the people who have been certified as first aiders.
Okay.
Because you have a host of skills.
Right. And self-knowledge.
And ways of approaching and evaluating what's happening within yourself.
Right.
That improve your mental well-being.
Right. So. Well, you said earlier, it's helpful to have someone who's removed from your situation.
Yeah.
And part of what the training does is allow you to be, however briefly, removed from your situation, right? Like you get this outside vantage point from your training.
That's it.
And like people have this experience in other contexts, even if something like coaching a sport, if someone has given you a sort of protocol for thinking when you're in you're in the batter's box and you're under pressure. If you can get outside of yourself and see it frees you in that moment, right? And so this is a very common kind of human experience is learning to see yourself from the outside can give you freedom from what's going on. Even something as basic as like recognizing that emotions are temporary.
Yeah.
Like that's a very basic thing.
Oh, yeah.
But then you're like, I am completely overwhelmed right now. This is a trick I use all the time. Today, I'm completely overwhelmed. I have like meeting. And I got in this morning, I got requests for 2 more meetings. And I was like, how am I going to, how am I going to do this? And blah, blah, blah. And then you say, you know what? By tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah. I do that.
I will not be feeling like this, right?
Yep. I use that exact same mental trick and it works well. Yeah. Right. To de-escalate and stuff as well.
So, when I'm in customs and I'm getting grilled at customs.
Yeah.
I have to be like, at some point in my life, this will be an interesting story.
Yeah.
Like that's you know.
And you just detach a little bit.
Yeah, it gives you a little critical distance. Anyways,
Yeah. So our conversations are always taking these kinds of topics and filtering them through our Catholic lens. And we're going to do that today as well. I think it's important because there's a lot of misconceptions that abound even today with how the Catholic Church feels and approaches the issue of suicide, and especially loved ones who have died by suicide,
right,
themselves. And so we're going to address that and then look at some ways that we can approach it and accompany each other through this.
Right. Yeah. I got a phone call. My cousin died of suicide. So this will come up in there's a history of bipolar in my family.
Yeah.
This particular cousin, I don't think was ever diagnosed with bipolar. So I don't know all the particulars.
Yeah.
But anyways, there's this history in my family. And then after he died by suicide, another friend who's a mutual cousin. So he's my cousin's cousin, but he's not my cousin, but we grew up together.
Yeah.
Is a guy who like believes in God and prays, but doesn't really have much of a like official relationship with the church. But he phoned me and he's like, so does this mean he's in hell? Because that's, and
it's one of the number one concerns.
Right.
Yeah.
Because just to label it right off the hop, the church says that suicide, I want to be careful. You can say that suicide is a mortal sin. That's not quite precise enough.
Yeah.
To be more accurate, you would say something like suicide meets one of the criteria of mortal sin, which is that it is grave matter.
It is grave, yeah.
Now, which means it is potentially a mortal sin. But the other two criteria to be an actual mortal sin and not just a potential mortal sin is full knowledge and full consent of the will or freedom, right?
Yeah.
Full knowledge and full freedom. And the church, whether on suicide or any other potential mortal sin, which includes like missing your Sunday obligation.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Never presumes to know full freedom or full knowledge.
Yeah.
About an individual case, right? So that, but people hear it's a mortal sin, and then that's just
a full stop.
That's game over.
This
right?
is actually for our CIA groups, for our lay formation program, I often teach a class on the catechism. And how to use the catechism. And one of the things we do as kind of an end activity is look at, like, we'll pick a topic and first start with, what do you think the church says about this? And then have them look it up and see what the church actually says about this. And suicide is one of the ones I use most.
It's a good one to use.
Because people have a sense of what the church would say about this.
Right.
And then when they read it, it's such a freeing, actually, kind of experience.
Right.
Like in the small groups, I'll walk around and you know which group is doing the suicide question, because all of a sudden you hear these, oh.
Right.
That's not what I expected.
Right. And there's an interesting dynamic that happens in terms of people's relationship with the church, because you'll have at least these two situations I've encountered. You have the person who thinks that their loved one is in hell because the church says so.
Yeah.
And then when they find out that there's hope for someone, and we'll talk a little bit about the details of that.
Yeah.
There's this like relief. Sometimes I had a Q&A. I was in Bentonville, Arkansas, and there was a Q&A, and the question was coming from a woman who had lost her brother to suicide. And there was this like intense kind of relief. So the one angle is they believed their loved one was in hell because they thought the church said so.
Yeah.
Now, the inverse of that is refusing to believe your loved one is in hell, but still thinking that the church says they are.
Yes.
And therefore thinking, well, the church is wrong about this.
Yeah.
Therefore, can I trust it on other matters?
On other things. Exactly.
Right? And so both of those are possibilities that stem from a misunderstanding of the church's teaching.
Yeah.
Right? So would it be good to read? I got the quote from the catechism.
Yeah. So the sections are, I think it's like 2280 to 2283 in the catechism, if you're looking
You got it. Because the quote I'm going to read here is 2283.
Which is the last one.
Yeah.
So it starts by acknowledging what we've just done. It's a grave matter.
Right.
And it involves not accepting the gift of life.
Right.
And taking agency over that gift of life that is due only to God.
Right.
So it starts off that, and we read that and we're like, yeah, that's exactly what I thought they would say.
Right.
Right. And then it gets into, but there's mitigating circumstances. It talks about psychology and the lack of freedom, the burdens of fear, hopelessness, those kinds of things that can be those mitigating factors you talked about. And then it ends with...
And then it says, we should not despair of the eternal salvation of persons who have taken their own lives. By ways known to him alone, God can provide the opportunity for salutary repentance. The church prays for persons who have taken their own lives.
Yeah.
Including in the official prayers of the church at funerals. And
that's right.
Right? Christian burial.
So funeral masses are indeed possible and really preferable. Like that would be a proper context for those kinds of prayers.
Right.
That would be one of the misconceptions that I know people have carried with them.
Right.
For years, that if you die by suicide, you can't have a Christian burial.
Right.
The catechism speaks directly against that.
Right. Which is, so this is interesting because one way to misunderstand this is because the church has denied burials and funeral rites to suicides in history.
In the history, yeah.
And one way to misunderstand what's happening is the church used to say that suicide was a mortal sin.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so the church has changed its teaching, which can be, again, read in a couple ways. Oh, the church got its act together and finally recognized what it should have recognized all along. And now all my other pet peeves about the church, it will change.
Can also be mitigated.
It will change about too, right?
Yeah.
That's one or the flip side is the church got wishy-washy and refused to take a stand for the truth. And suicide, in fact, is a mortal sin, and the church should just say so and not pander, because now you're giving people permission, essentially, to commit mortal sin, right? And both of those are possible interpretations if you think the church changed its teaching.
Yeah.
The church did not change its teaching. The church changed its practice in light of new knowledge.
That's it.
Which is what the church says it does and does regularly
done in every age.
On every age and in a whole variety of situations. And so it's let's dig into what has changed and what hasn't changed, right? So you said at the beginning of the catechism, it talks about how it's grave matter.
Yeah.
And that has been from the beginning and continues to this day.
Yeah.
And so it is potentially mortal sin because it's grave matter. And
I would want to say too, because I know we touched on this yesterday or the other day when we were talking about doing this episode. When the church recognizes that it's grave matter and that it is an affront to the gift of life, we kind of know that.
Right.
In our hearts, right? That's that sense of reality that we have, that sense of the truth that God's given us. How do we know that? Because of the way we react.
Right.
When someone has taken their lives, right? It hits us hard and it hits us heavy because there's a part of us that knows something tragically wrong has taken place.
Right.
Which is what the church is saying.
Right. Well, and to go even further on that, the reaction of many people when a loved one has committed suicide is anger at that person.
Yeah.
For an act of selfishness that left the rest of us to carry all this pain.
Because that's how it feels.
Right. And maybe left us to clean up other messes, whether they're financial or relational or whatever else.
Which actually, those sections of the catechism also identify.
Right.
Right. The burdens and the separations between the human relationships that take place as a result. Right. It's saying all of this is real. What you're feeling, all of that anger, all of that brokenness, all of that tragedy in your heart at the loss of a loved one, those are real things.
Right. And it's very possible to feel anger at someone who has done something wrong, who has hurt themselves and you and the family, the community. It's very possible to be angry at that and justly angry.
Yeah.
Justly angry. And
because it isn't fair.
It isn't right. Exactly.
Isn't fair.
And also sympathetic that their situation was overwhelming, that there are mitigating factors that you think, despite your just anger, you have compassion. Yeah. You can understand, right? Like, it's this not an either or.
Yeah.
And the church's framing of grave matter, but not pronouncing upon freedom and knowledge, actually allows you a framework to be able to say both true things at the same time.
Yes.
That this is genuinely wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't know this person's culpability, and I have great reason for hope in God's mercy.
That's right.
Right? And to take the weight off of one half of that scale, right? Which might be tempting. Right? Because you feel like, oh, okay, if you excuse culpability, then you're not calling evil. And I know it's evil, and we certainly don't want to encourage people to think this is a way out by downplaying the evil element, right? So that's one. Or the other way, you think, well, the church needs to be merciful.
Yeah.
Therefore, it should not call this grave matter because that places too much of a burden. misunderstands, I think, the way the balance works. Because we actually want, deep in our hearts, we want judgment and mercy. But we think that those two things are in a zero-sum game and that we have to pick one over the other.
That's a good way of putting it.
And the church insists that Jesus is the just judge and he's the merciful judge.
Yeah.
And so justice and mercy are not opposed. And in fact, to say something is grave matter and to say there's a very high probability that there was not full knowledge and full freedom is to uphold both justice and mercy. And so to me, it's very important that we don't fudge in either direction
actually,
on that.
It creates space for the complexity of our own human experiences of that.
Right.
That, as we've been talking about, the anger, the frustration, the betrayal, right? All of that kind of stuff. There's space for that. You're acknowledged. The desire for mercy and hope for our loved ones who have taken their lives, who have lost their lives to suicide. There's space in there for that.
Right. And the reverse now, and we're going to get to assisted suicide in our current legal regime later in the show, but just to mention it now, there are people who go through that experience in their family. There's an assisted suicide in the family, and they feel like something wrong has been done.
Yeah.
But the way that the whole thing is framed as
there's no space
there's no space to be able to be angry that something wrong happened. They're having their innate desire for justice stifled.
Yeah.
Because mercy and justice have been put in this zero-sum game and we've picked mercy. And when you're not allowed to say something's wrong, even though you have been deeply wounded, that is unfair.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the church has not changed its teaching. It has maintained how it understands the different factors necessary for mortal sin and that suicide constitutes grave matter. That has been maintained.
Yeah.
What has shifted is our deepening understanding, particularly as we learn more about mental health and those sorts of things, about how free people in these situations are likely to be.
Yeah.
We have learned more and more about our lack of unfreedom with respect to all kinds of circumstances, including, I was just at Hemingway's house.
Yeah.
So suicide runs in Hemingway's family. And you're like, okay, if it runs in the family, what is that?
Yeah.
And it turns out it's actually like a blood condition where, I'm not going to remember is it hemochromatosis? But basically there's a buildup of some metal in your bloodstream that in over extended periods of time makes you crazy.
Yeah.
Well, that's just one example of some extraneous factor that is very hard to attach any sort of moral condemnation to.
Yeah.
Right. And we've just learned, that's one example, but we've just learned more and more and more about different health and mental health and the mental health and physical health. We divide them as if they're like two different things.
Yeah. But
not always. There's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah.
And anyways, what the church has changed is its practice in light of our increasing knowledge of the mitigating factors facing human freedom.
Yeah.
Which does not undermine the moral evaluation of the act in itself, but it does tell you something about the person who felt that was their only option, usually, right?
That's right. And so we have space for Christian burial in the church, right? For including those of our family members or friends who have died by suicide in prayers of the faithful, right? In all Souls Day celebrations, all of those kinds of spaces within our church,
right,
where we can openly acknowledge this now.
Right. And I would say a very key pastoral context is in talking to our families. How do you talk to children when their parent, their sibling, their aunt or uncle, whatever, dies by suicide? Mm-hmm. If they know that it's a mortal sin, how do you talk to them about? Yeah. Right.
I would even take a step back too, but creating space for those who are struggling with thoughts of suicide to be able to come to the church and know that they can find a space to have that conversation and not be judged and condemned because they're contemplating a mortal sin.
Right.
Which can be a barrier to reaching out at exactly the time when you need to reach out the most.
Right. Even actually, this is a good point. So contemplating something is a really interesting thing, because some things, the contemplation of them can itself be sinful, right? If you lead yourself, right? So I'm a married man, but I meet this lady who's interesting and fun and kind, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then like one thought enters my mind, unbidden.
Yeah.
Right? Well, there's no sin in an unbidden thought.
Yeah.
But then I think on it.
You start entertaining
the thought, and that's a different kind of thing. And what we know about suicide is like these kinds of invasive thoughts are not, I mean, I guess it's theoretically possible someone could be entertaining them in a sinful way. But like everything we know about the situation and mental health would tell you this is an invasive thought.
Yeah.
Right. And
that's often the language that individuals experiencing that kind of decline in their mental well-being will refer to it as, right? These intrusive thoughts that come in, and in particular when we're most vulnerable, but even when we're not.
Right. And to give the person experiencing that permission to talk to someone with, because that's not a sin.
Yeah.
And to talk to someone and say, I need help, without the sense that not, of course, if we are sinning, it's good to be able to talk to people about that too.
Yeah.
But it can be a layer that mitigates against disclosure if you feel like you're saying something bad about yourself or that you're sinning. So to give people permission to say like these intrusive thoughts or whatever else are not a sin.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to wear that when you're coming for help, right?
Yeah. And so if you are, if you're a pastor who may be approached by somebody, oftentimes this might come up in the confessional, where somebody who believes that the intrusive thoughts themselves are sinful,
right,
may bring this up in confession, or in confession or in a pastoral counseling situation, whether that's official pastoral counseling or just because somebody comes to you seeking support in that way, where in the conversations, you start to wonder yourself, is this person in danger?
Right.
Is this person contemplating taking their lives, right? Those kinds of things. I don't know about you. I've been in situations where I've wondered about that and stuff. One of the things that can be really helpful that is hard for us, I think, right now in the current cultural context is to actually name that in the conversation. That can, if you look at the kinds of advice out right now around how do we prevent suicide, and you'll see a lot of this through the month of September. It's one of the big things that is being encouraged is to not be afraid to ask the question.
Right.
Right.
Now I'm thinking that there has to be better and worse ways of asking the question, because what you don't want to do is plant a seed that says, oh, you're in a really bad spot. Have you considered?
No.
Of course, that's not
right.
what we say, but you don't want it, because that is what will be said in other contexts now in our healthcare situation.
Yeah.
And so we want the way we frame it has to be clearly distinct.
So you would not want to ask that question in a judgmental way. You're not thinking of killing yourself, are you?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because immediately that wall of judgment now has come down. And yes, you wouldn't want to do it in a way that's suggestive.
Right.
Right. In that you perspective. But I think just saying to somebody, it sounds like you're really struggling right now. Maybe it sounds like you've been talking around this issue a little bit, because oftentimes individuals or family members, friends will talk around, not using the language itself. Is taking your life something that you have been considering?
Right.
Right.
See, I'm remembering like when I told you I've called it like a mental health crisis line. And I think they say, like, they have like an intake questionnaire.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And one of the questions is like, is it, are you in danger of self-harm, or are you considering self-harm? And I think the language of self-harm, now I'm not a professional, I'm just speculating here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out of my own experience being asked that didn't rattle me. I was able to say no, and it was okay. But they didn't have to say the word suicide because it was included within self-harm.
It can be.
Didn't put the finger right on the thing. So I don't, maybe there are times when it's good to put the finger right on the thing.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if in some cases a really, like, are you in danger of hurting yourself? Yeah. Because if that's the case, we need to proceed.
Now, one
with
of the trickier, more complex situations is that in some people, suicide isn't a harm to themselves. It's a means of ending the pain.
So depending on how they're conceptualizing it, that may or may not work. Whereas for me, that was the one question was inclusive of the other.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so some of that comes with just having the relationship.
Right.
And the conversation.
Right.
I think if this was a close relationship with a friend or a close family member, I would not hesitate to ask if suicide is something that they've been contemplating.
Right.
Is that something that has been coming to mind?
Right. I like the passive framing, right? Are you contemplating is active? Has it come to mind? Is a passive framing where there's less agency attached, which might be valuable. Again, I'm nervous because I'm speaking as a non-professional. I'm just speaking as someone imagining myself being asked the question.
Yeah, but that is a perspective that is valuable to have, right? To recognize, okay, so somebody asks this of me. How do I feel about that? How do I find myself reacting about that, right? I think the important thing is to not be afraid to have the conversation.
Okay, yeah.
And in particular, in those situations in the church where you may be a figure of trust or leadership within the community, or you could, or so that would be a pastor, that would be somebody who is maybe involved in sacraments or has forming those relationships with parents or with young people in the community itself. You could be the office administrator who happens to pick up the phone at the time. Melissa ran into that stuff. She, in the first few weeks of beginning work at a parish, she realized that part of her job that wasn't written down was
triage for
mental health triage
stuff. Right.
That kind of stuff. So
right.
Yeah, gauging that. But in particular in this month of suicide prevention, the fear of having that conversation with somebody is seen as part of what's exacerbating the issue. Right. It's because it's all around the stigmas that we've been talking about already. And fears around suicide.
I mean, the general spiritual principle is that things brought to the light get less dangerous than things that are left in the dark.
Yeah.
Right. And that's true across the whole range, whatever is, whether it's addictions or self-harm or mental health or relationship troubles or anything. Now, that doesn't mean everyone needs to know everything about everyone.
No.
That's not the same thing.
No, but it's recognizing in particular moments and conversations when there is something that maybe would be better to bring into the light.
Right. With a trusted person,
in a trusted person. We talked about the 988 number at the beginning of the show. I have recommended, so individuals knowing the work that Melissa and I do in the area of mental health will approach us oftentimes, and they're wanting to have these conversations with their loved ones because they're afraid that they may be thinking about taking their lives. Or I don't like using that term. I have to practice not using that term.
Okay.
Of losing their loved ones to suicide.
Okay.
And that, because taking your life brings that connotation of intention, right?
Yeah, it could.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But they've been concerned about, how do I have that conversation? What do I do? And I've actually recommended that they call 988 together in the conversation. that you have, because oftentimes when you call that number, they'll ask, do you have somebody around that can be a safe person for you in this moment?
Right.
And so you can have somebody with more professional training on the speaker in that conversation.
Right.
With the two of you. And that has also been quite helpful.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because even just reflecting on my own experience now of saying like, well, I think this, but I'm not sure. This is how it would feel to me, but I'm not trained.
You can call 988 yourself with the individual. And you would ask, is it okay if we bring somebody in this conversation who has maybe a little bit more expertise than me?
Just admitting your own limitations and saying like, this is really important, but I'm not sure that I'm as equipped as I would like to be to handle the particulars here. I like that. And you're like, and this isn't just theoretical, like people who have done this.
I've suggested that to individuals and they have done it and it has been helpful.
Right. Which is better than all the things I'm saying, which are just like riffing.
But sometimes you don't have a choice.
Yeah,
right?
no, I mean, of course. Reflecting on your own experience is good. Just recognize the limit of what you're doing when you're doing it. Right?
Exactly. And that's, again, part of mental health first aid is recognizing those limits and knowing when and where to bring in additional supports.
Right.
For that too. So thank you everyone for joining the podcast this week on Thinking Faith. And so here we are having to wrap up some topic that has been scintillatingly interesting.
It must have been great.
It must have been because you're still here. And it's time to say goodbye. So we, as always, continue to pray that God may bless you and those you love with a faith that is always seeking understanding.
St. Thomas and St. Ignatius,
pray for us.
Amen.
Amen.